I need to ask myself a hard question out loud today. Is moving to Houston growth or is it an escape? In this episode, I'm going to walk through what Austin gave me, what I'm carrying forward, and how I know this move isn't running, it's intentional. Let's parlay. What is going on, family? Welcome to episode 32, second episode of 2026. Before we get into today's topic of Austin and what I've gotten from it, what I'm carrying forward, and how I know this move isn't running, I'd like to just have a quick update with you about what's going on with me. First and foremost, I wanted to plug my Fit and Faith program. As I mentioned during the last call, I have done some really strong refinements. I've taken a break from acquiring any new clients, and I've worked a lot on the program to make it serve you the best I possibly could. So that's something that I wanted to share. Is if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, click the link in the bio and we can go from there. The other thing that I wanted to mention is just a quick light update on some of the things that I've gotten recently through prayer. And a lot of you know where I am with my faith. It's pretty obvious what I believe. And I've talked about this before, but I really want to dive into what a two-way conversation with God can provide. And there's some things that God has shared with me recently. And, you know, for whatever you believe, for me, I believe it's God telling me these things. Okay, so, you know, whatever you subscribe to is completely up to you. But during my prayer, what I'll do is at the end, I'll just ask for guidance on things that I feel a little bit uncertain about. Or even if I'm not looking for guidance, I'll just pause after my prayer and just close my eyes, breathe, and try to focus on whatever that voice is telling me in my mind. And the big thing that always comes up is if you believe, if you have faith that you'll hear my voice, then you will hear it. And every time that I have that thought, God's voice seems to come right after that. And there's plenty of information that I get from it. So I just wanted to share a couple of things that I've been hearing from the Lord before we get into today's topic. The first thing is be with me and I will be with you. This is God speaking to me. This is what I've heard constantly throughout this past week. The other thing is I will move all doubt, uncertainty, and temptation out of your way if you're with me. So the more you spend time with me, the more you're conscious of me, the more these things that normally would trip you up are not going to trip you up anymore. So just stay with me. Continue to seek me before you seek anything else. And the other thing that has really been eye-opening is sowing into God's children. And the way that I've been doing that is by interacting with one stranger a day. And it's been really, it's been so eye-opening. One, I just want to shout out my mother because I've always been so impressed and often confused by my mother's ability to connect with strangers. We could be at Costco, we could be at the mall, we could be at a gas station. And my mom always finds some way of connecting with someone. And for her being from New York, that is pretty rare because most people from New York are like, you know, tunnel vision. You do what you do and you move on. But growing up in Delaware and seeing her operate from a day-to-day basis, it makes me realize that there was so much that she was receiving from those interactions as much as she was giving. And what I've realized by practicing these social habits in connecting with people is that I'm getting a lot more from it than anything. So, you know, what I've heard from the Lord when I pray is sow into my children and I'll sow into you. And I really think that there's an exchange happening there when you're interacting with strangers, when you're giving someone a compliment. Like this morning at the gym, I saw a dude who was about my height, white fellow with like a slick back haircut. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey man, you kind of remind me of Josh Allen." He was like, "Don't do that to me, bro. Don't have me starting off my day all confident like this. Like, come on." And it was just a nice interaction that we were able to have. And I've been doing that a lot at the gym just to remove all that sort of like isolation. I'm in my own world working on my trauma sort of vibe and more of a, just trying to raise the tide a little bit to lift everybody up. And the last thing I'll say that God has been mentioning is that, you represent me. So when you're out there in the human marketplace and you're talking to people, you're representing me in all aspects and all facets of your life. So those are just some quick things that I wanted to share with you that I feel like the Lord has given to me before we get into today's topic, because I felt like it would just be hard for me to keep talking to you guys without sharing that and hopefully inspiring you to have a similar prayer technique and listening for whatever God has in store for you and whatever comes into your mind and deciphering those thoughts. So just wanted to talk through that. Now, let's get into today's topic. What has Austin given me? And was this really an escape, or is this a path to growth in my move to Houston? The reason why I feel that this is a path to growth is because I have a very clear picture of why God placed me here. It seems so obvious now. And it was hard. It was hard. And I don't know if anybody who's watching this has moved to a different city or different country, wherever. But that first couple of months, maybe even the first year, it could be really tough. Thankfully for me, I was blessed enough to have just random acts of connection. And it's all random, right? But maybe it's not. What feels like random connections that came about, and I was just fortunate enough for them to fall into my lap and for me to have community and friends that were built from that. Whether it be through Instagram, whether it be through people who moved here from Los Angeles, who I didn't even know who were moving here. And then I was like, oh, wow, like what a coincidence. And then all of a sudden I'm getting plugged in with their network. A lot of that happened for me in moving to Austin. And although there were some times where I was very much stuck in my LA mindset, very much stuck in my isolation mindset, there were things that Austin showed me and that gave me a different perspective and a much clearer vision on what I want for my future, and also what I want for the community I'm going to develop. So I wanted to share those things with you. The first thing that I wanted to share that I got from Austin is how to work. How to work. There are a lot of successful people in Austin, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people who are looking to hustle and bustle and get wherever they're going. And I think for me, I've had a great work ethic, especially when I'm focused and I'm mission driven. I remember when I was studying mechanical engineering, I tended to just lock in when I was studying for a certain class or when I needed to, work on a project. I didn't entertain too many distractions and all, except for my senior year. My senior year, me and one of my closest brothers there we were having a good time because we both got employed and it was fun. But anyway, let's move on. I've always had a good work ethic. However, when you become an entrepreneur, and especially an entrepreneur where you're working virtually, you have very clear pathways you can take, right? You could decide to do nothing with your day because you have the option to do nothing. Or you could decide to do something based off of the plans that you set forth. And I've always been attuned to like structure and planning. However, being around other people who are focused on getting success and improving their business and growing their business and seeing how they attack it, that's something that I really didn't see up close and personal. Like people who were in the grind, who were in the gutter on their way and a lot further maybe than I am, or maybe, eye to eye with where I'm at in business, and just seeing how committed they are to their craft and to their business. That rubbed off on me. It normalized the grind, and also it made it easier for me to seek counsel and get advice from other folks who are in similar industries, like other online fitness coaches, other entrepreneurs. It gave me perspective on the problems that I have right now in my business versus the problems that other folks have at further points in their business. Just learned how to navigate business in general as a result of being around people who were, in the same field, in the same mindset, which is a big reason why I moved here to Austin. Although I didn't have a strategy of how to get that and how to build that, I knew that that was something that I wanted, was to be around other people who were like-minded and doing similar things. So how to work and how to work hard, I think, was a big thing that I've gotten from Austin. And I'm extremely thankful for that, because I know that that energy and that focus, when you're in that mode, you're hard to stop. And I've definitely leaned into that throughout the time that I've been here and as of recently. The second thing that I wanted to share was from Austin. I think I've gotten a very clear picture of what my ideal community is. Now, when I moved from Los Angeles to Austin, I knew that I wanted something different. I knew that I didn't want to go out and be drinking and be partying and all that sort of stuff. I knew that that part of my life was pretty much done. However, I then became very much like a homebody in LA, and it was almost as if like I just didn't really get out as much as I could have. And I was always going to things based off of what I was invited to, but I wasn't initiating things, and I wasn't looking and seeking certain community, right? When I moved to Austin, like I said, I was fortunate enough to have some of these aspects of my community come to me, but it's made it very clear what I need in my community. Living in Austin has made it super clear what I want my community to look like and to carry, with me throughout the time that I'm engaged in it. So one is faith, obviously. So a home church, a community of other believers that I can connect with on a consistent basis, right? That could be a Bible study, that could be church, that could be serving with a church or outside of it. I've done all those things in Austin, and those things I've never done before. Now, I've gone to church periodically, I've had other believers that I've connected with, but it's never been a part of what I believe my community needs to consist of and needs to be top priority. So obviously a faith-based community, an entrepreneurial community, a business community, how important that is. And Austin's a great place for finding other entrepreneurs. This is a place where there's so many people moving here, and having such an expansive mindset, they're creating all sorts of things that you've never heard of or seen, or they're creating things that you've seen, but in such a niche market that you've never really thought of that idea before. And that makes for a lot more creative flow in your own personal business, because you're seeing like, there's no limitations on what could be done. So, an entrepreneurial community, a self-improvement based community. I've had so many conversations with people here in Austin about the books that we've read, the scriptures that we've read, all the sorts of like hacks that will help you become more productive, but also help you feel better and do better. There's a whole bunch of other people who are similar to me who don't go outside past a certain time, who wake up early and have a morning routine. And it's so nice to be around others like that, because then you don't feel like you're alone, and it normalizes self-improvement. So that was another big thing that I got from Austin. And then the other thing I would say is folks who are focused on family. I have met other married people who are also entrepreneurs, or even, in their own respective 9-to-5s. And just to see how important family is to them, their wives, their husbands, boyfriend, girlfriends, right, if they're working towards marriage, and just to see where they place that in their lives and the way that they go about communicating, how they met each other. Most of the time for the folks that I've met, it's either through church or at the gym, which is like, okay, I think that's probably where I'm gonna, meet my wife, is either one of those places. So that's good to talk to people who have gone down a similar path. So seeing all of that has really put together what I feel is going to be my ideal community and what it needs to consist of. And then the other thing I'd say is just like doing more wholesome stuff. I feel like 2025 was the first year that I had committed to like just being overall wholesome for the majority of the year. Now I had some points where I slipped up, went back to old vices and such, but I mean, one, not going out past a certain time. Like I just, it was very hard to convince me to do such a thing. I can probably count on one hand how many times I went out past 9 p.m. Okay, so that's one. Serving the homeless was something that I've never done before, especially having parents who are from New York and also like being close to Philly, and you have a certain attitude toward the homeless that almost creates a barrier in humanizing them. And after serving the homeless, it's definitely given me a wider perspective on the challenges that have led to people getting to those situations. And I'll also say like just really cool wellness events happen in Austin. So like under the umbrella of wholesome things, like there's this event called Coffee and Chill where they have cold plunges, they have all sorts of different vendors, and you show up, there's a DJ, music's playing, everybody's caffeinated, everybody's, coming out of these cold plunges, feeling all sorts of jolts of energy. And it's just a beautiful time, beautiful time. It almost doesn't feel like it's a real event that's happening. That's something that I didn't know was really possible, or maybe it was available in Los Angeles, but just not as readily exposed to me, given where I was with my mindset then. So that's something that I've gotten from Austin. I'm like, okay, I want to continue doing that sort of thing in Houston. I want to find events like that, or shoot, maybe I'm even creating events like that in Houston to make that more of a normalized social interaction. So yeah, just understanding what my ideal community is and what I want it to look like has been a big thing. So that's my second takeaway. The third, which I mean, sometimes I get emotional thinking about it, is just how nice and caring people are in Austin. I mean, just, people will go out of their way to check in on you, to make sure you're good, and to provide support in any way possible. Like I mentioned, there's been some times where things weren't going as well as I would have wanted them to, or it just didn't go as expected. And I started having a lot of self-doubt. I started isolating. I started just going in and hiding. And people here brought me out. They brought me out. And they also understood, and they didn't judge. And they wanted to help in any way possible to empower me to get out of that situation. And that's something that I guess because I haven't been in that situation in quite some time. Well, I've never been in that situation ever in my life, but in anything similar where I feel like I needed support. It's been a while since I've been in that situation. Seeing how people showed up who haven't known me for all that long, and I wasn't probably the best, in interacting with them and communicating these things, but they still reached out and connected was really important for me to learn that there are truly genuine, caring people in this world. And it's not all transactional. There's not always like an even exchange. There's people who want to pour out and give, and they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, which, like I said, living in Los Angeles, growing up in the Northeast, it can be hard to believe that, if I'm going to be completely transparent with you. And I'll also say the other aspect of this, people being caring, people showing up, is, I kind of mentioned it earlier, like there's no gatekeeping in Austin. And when I say gatekeeping, you ever talk to people and you may bring up a certain issue or a certain problem, and maybe they're ahead of you in business or in that endeavor, but you get a sense that they're kind of not sharing as much as they could be sharing. Like there's a bit of gatekeeping happening with their information. They're like, I don't really want to tell you this because this is mine. This is my information. And I worked hard to learn this, and all whatever perspective that they may have. Ain't none of that in Austin. You see, you talk to somebody about what they got going on, they will lay out everything that you ask. There's no gatekeeping. I mean, they'll tell you the prices that they're offering for their programs. They'll tell you, what systems they have in place in order to reduce time. They'll tell you where they found their employee. I mean, it's just so much open communication about ways to help someone. And there's no like scarcity mindset here. It's full of abundance. Everybody is looking to put someone on and connect someone to the right person. And people really go out of their way. I mean, even recently, I've connected with a few guys, and one of the guys he's worked in social media before and making brand deals and all that sort of stuff. And whenever we hang out, he'll make it a point. He's like, "Yo, do you need any content?" And he's not a content creator, but he'll ask me. He's like, "Yo, do you need any content? Like, give me your phone. I'll record you." And I'm like, I always felt strange asking people for that, especially if you're not within that space. But to see that someone goes out of their way, who I just met maybe, a week and a half ago, it just really means something to me, because it shows that people are looking out a lot more than you would think. And that's the sort of energy, that's the sort of vibe that's brewing here in Austin that I think is just really, really hard to find in other places in other cities, because of the nature of the people who live there, what they do for work, their mindset, their beliefs, their core values, age, all that sort of stuff, I think plays into that. And the last thing I'll mention within how nice and caring people are is, and I think this might just be the South in general, to be honest with you. I don't think that this is specific to Austin, although it is prominent. Interactions with strangers are so friendly. I remember when I first moved here, I mean, it was like once a day, someone was saying something to me and just initiating conversation. And a lot of it, when I went to Costco, because Costco, I love my old people there. I mean, they're so happy and they're so friendly. They'll be talking sort of out loud and hoping that you respond and stuff. And when I do it, you could tell they just get a good kick out of it. Kind of remind me of like my mom to an extent. But the human marketplace out here is so uplifting. There's a lot of just connection and conversation with people. And I think that is pretty indicative of the South, because even when I did my road trip with my brother, we went through Mississippi, Alabama, all through the deep South. And that kind of happened wherever we went. At least for me, that's how I felt. But yeah, I mean, whether it be Costco, coffee shops, at the gym, everybody here is pretty friendly and initiates conversation. And the thing that I'm sharing with you is also reflective of what I've been initiating as well, is that when I've contributed to that exchange, I've noticed how receptive people are. Like even this morning, I'm recording this earlier than when I'm posting it, but this morning I went to the gym and I talked to maybe 4 or 5 people that I never spoken to at the gym and maybe just seen in passing and stuff. And each one of the conversations was just so friendly. They just opened up a lot about whatever they had going on. They were curious. They were asking me questions about what I had going on, uplifting. Yeah, it's something that, when I was in Los Angeles, I've received or felt the opposite of that, I should say. And being here in Austin, I've just learned that people are nice. And sometimes it takes you being nice and initiating it in order to unlock that for a certain person. So most people that you interact with, when you are nice, they're going to be nice. It's a small majority where if you initiate something, they're not going to be nice. They're going to be closed off. From my experience, the more volume of people that I've spoken to, the more that I've actually realized that on the whole, most people are nice, especially if you start off being nice. And for someone like myself, I'm 6'4", I'm 230 pounds. Usually I rock me a thick beard, but I don't know how I come off to other people. Sometimes I'm like, what? Am I scaring people, just with my presence and stuff? But I like to counteract that with just, being friendly. And that's one huge thing that I've gotten from Austin as well too. So just to recap the 3 things: 1 is how to work. 2, what is my ideal community? And then the 3rd is how nice and caring people are. Those are 3 things that I have personally gotten from Austin that I don't think you can really get elsewhere. The other things that I'll mention just as like intangibles, I'll say the outdoor scenery, being able to go on walks, walking along Lady Bird Lake, I haven't really hiked all that much, although I really wanted to. That's probably something I'm going to do before I dip out of here. Those sort of things have just been another like cherry on top, but it wasn't really the core. For me, I'm going to take these things to Houston, and I'm going to become a lot more intentional about how I build my community based off of what I've learned from Austin and what I know is available here. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's going to be exactly the same. I know it's going to be different, but at least now, instead of me just thankfully being blessed with people who got introduced to me and fell into my lap here in Austin, I can go out into the marketplace and initiate those things, be intentional, and start to form them myself. And that's something that I'm very much looking forward to, which I think is a personal piece of growth for me, because that's not something that I've ever been really attuned to, is initiating conversations, initiating connections, and trying to create something as opposed to just letting whatever happens. So those are really, really big takeaways. And that's why I feel that Houston is a growth move and not an escape move. I've escaped from plenty in my life. I've run away from plenty in my life. When it comes to challenges and problems and uncertainties, I've done plenty of that. This ain't that at all. I've already let you know why I moved to Houston and what I'm looking forward to. But I hope in talking about what I'm getting from Austin, you can start to look at where you live, what you value, and start to form your community to look how you want it to look. You don't need to be around people that aren't doing the things that you want to do. You don't need to be around people who are convincing you that whatever you're aspiring to isn't worth it or that it's too scary. You don't need to be around those people, right? You can start to look for people and form a community of your own. And maybe that requires a change of scenery, right? Maybe it requires you moving, or maybe it requires you just initiating more conversations and speaking more about what your vision is and what you're looking for, because then you'll start to find it naturally in the marketplace. So those were the things that I wanted to share today. I hope that you've gotten value from this, and I hope that you've been encouraged to bet on yourself. And if you're in the middle of a transition and you're moving or you're thinking about a move, I'm sure that some of this could have been helpful for you as well too. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next episode. We are going once a week. I'm committed the whole year, 2026. That's 52 episodes. Okay, so that's 22 more than what we did last year, but it's going to be consistent. It's going to be every week, even in the midst of my move. I'm already planning to make sure that I have something set up in Houston so that I can record. So best believe you're going to be taken care of, and we got more content coming. Take care. God bless. Have a good one.